And so now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Cynthia Carney. Cynthia is a founding member of CIAC and the executive director of Goodwin House Palliative Care and Hospice. She's an RN and has been working in hospice for 20 years. The Coalition to Improved Advanced Care, or CIAC, is a collaborative effort of nonprofit and community organizations in Arlington County and surrounding areas. CIAC's mission is to improve the quality of life, both for those facing advanced illness and for their caregivers. So now I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to begin the presentation.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope this is a very interactive session. I want to hear any stories that you have that can help better explain what we're going to be talking about. And of course, if you have any questions, let us know right away, or you can wait until the end. Just wanted to let you know that some of the community members who got together about 5 years ago to start Coalition to Improve Advanced Care, or CIAC. Marymount University is the major person, the major institute that put this together. And one of their professors is still spearheading a lot of our activities. Goodwin House Hospice, Capital Caring, Virginia Hospital Center, and the Arlington County Commissions and agencies. Our goals for today is to increase understanding of advanced care planning, looking at it not as just a one-time thing that people do when it's an emergency, but as an ongoing process. Improve ability to communicate your wishes for advanced illness care. Learn how to document your wishes in an advance directive, and you have many options for that. And learn how to share your advance directive with the people who will be responsible for making sure that your wishes are granted if you cannot speak for yourself. So when we talk about advanced care planning, like I said, it is a process. You know, it's really good to start thinking about these things on a continuum when you're healthy, or living with chronic illness, or approaching the end of life. And things change. I mean, when you're healthy, you may have a totally different way of looking at what you want to happen to you at the end of life than you would when you're approaching the end of life. Most people are not thinking about this when they're healthy. Comes up if there's a tragedy, such as a car accident or any other kind of accident. But if you're lucky enough to be one of those people who thinks about these things or wants to plan ahead, it's good to start thinking about it so that it doesn't take you by surprise as you get older. So in order to express what you want to do, if you were not able to speak for yourself, you know, there's several ways to do that. And the first one, of course, is to communicate that, the spoken word. It's not easy to have this conversation with your loved ones. And a lot of people don't even discuss it. But it's truly a gift that you give to your family when you tell them what you would want to do if you were not able to speak for yourself. It's, as this says, it's one of the most important conversations you can have with your loved ones. One resource that we've used with CIAC is the Conversation Project. And they actually give you tips on when to bring it up and how to bring it up. So next is documenting. How do you document this, and who's going to listen to you if you do document it? The simplest way to do this is to use the Virginia Advanced Directive for Healthcare. This is a state document which can be filed in a Virginia state registry, and it's very simple. It doesn't get into a lot of subtleties about what you would want to do if something happened, but it simply goes through the whole process of writing this down and documenting your wishes. 5 wishes is something that a lot of people want to use because it really does go into detail, even down to the detail of what kind of music that you want to listen to if you're not aware of your surroundings. And we're going to go over both of these documents. So I'm just going to briefly go over the steps in filling out one of your advanced directives. And the first is to find someone who is going to be what they call, quote unquote, your agent. This is the responsible person who will make those decisions on your behalf if you can't make them yourselves. Give directions about what medical treatment you would want if you can't communicate. And you do not have to get these documents notarized, but you do need to have 2 witnesses sign them. So the advanced directives that you would fill out follows an if and then model. If death is imminent and I am unlikely to recover, then this is what I would like for others to do. If I am unaware or unable to interact with others and unlikely to recover, this is what I would like to do. They all consider common life-prolonging treatments, such as tube feeding, IV fluids, CPR, ventilator respirator, dialysis, and antibiotics. Let's talk a little bit about the agent. You don't want to appoint somebody to be your agent who you know is not going to follow your directions. I always give the example of my sister who I don't think she would follow my directions. She would keep me alive until the very last second. So my agent is going to be my spouse, who I know we've talked about this a million years. And, of course, I'm in hospice and palliative care, so it's something we talk about all the time. And we both agree on what we would want to happen to each other. So I know that he would definitely respect my wishes. And he's not the only one that I've talked to this about, because if he was unable to make this decision for me at the same time that I'm unable to make my decision, I want other people to know about it too. This isn't a screenshot of the Virginia Advanced Directive for Healthcare. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like and how it's set up. Again, you're filling this out for yourself. You're appointment, the section 1 is appointment and powers of my agent. And this explains what your agent can do for you, what kind of decisions that person can make. And on this form, you can write in anything you want to. So if you have a very specific change that you want to say in here, you can just write it in. It's legal. So here you're appointing this person, you're writing in all the demographics about that person. And that person is going to be your primary agent. If the primary agent is not reasonably available or unable to act as your agent, then you would appoint a second one. These agents have full authority to make health care decisions on your behalf, as described in this Virginia Advanced Directive. You state in here that you want your agent to follow your desires and preferences. And if he can't determine what healthcare choice that he thinks you would have liked on your behalf, then hopefully that person knows you well enough that they can follow your interests and make a decision. The second part of this is the powers of my agent. And this is where it says what that person can do. They can consent to or refuse or withdraw consent to any type of health care. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just going to briefly review some of this. They can request, receive, and review any oral or written information regarding your situation so that they can look at health records. They can discuss it with the doctor. They can employ and discharge your healthcare provider. So if they don't think your doctor's doing a good enough job, they could fire him or her. They can authorize your admission, transfer, or discharge to or from a hospital, hospice, nursing home, or any other facility. They can also authorize admission to a healthcare facility for treatment of mental illness. And they are continuing to serve as your agent. To continue to serve as my agent if I object to the agent's authority after I have been determined to be incapable of making an informed decision. They can authorize participation in any healthcare study and authorize my participation in any healthcare study approved by an institutional review board or research review committee. So that's the first part of the first page of the Virginia Advanced Directive for Healthcare. So I'm going to go on to section 2, which is my healthcare instructions. And this is when you start to talk about what your preferences are. And you check only one box in this part 1 here. I do not want treatments to prolong my life. I want all treatments to prolong my life as long as possible within the limits of generally accepted healthcare standards. And then you can write anything you want to down here. For instance, if you wanted to say, I do not want any treatments to prolong my life, but you decide you do want dialysis, you can write that down here. And the second is I provide the following instructions if my condition makes me unaware of myself or my surroundings or unable to interact with others. And it is reasonably certain that I will never recover this awareness or ability, even with medical treatment. Again, you would check off what you would want in that situation. And here there's a third one. And often younger people, agents for younger people make this decision even without an advanced directive. I want to try treatments for a period of time in the hope of some improvement of my condition. I had a situation with my own mother-in-law in which she had a massive stroke, and she was on life-prolonging treatment for a few days just to see what the course of her condition would bring. And we eventually respected her decisions and took her off of the life-sustaining treatment. And again, in any of these sections, you can write in anything that you would like them to follow that's not in here. And there's also a section for anatomical gifts. And then finally, you would sign and have 2 witness signatures. Any questions so far? So another option that a lot of people really enjoy is the 5 Wishes, which is a pamphlet that goes through the following 5 areas. The person I want to make care decisions for me when I can't, it discusses that. The kind of medical treatment I want or don't want, how comfortable I want to be, how I want people to treat me, and what I want my loved ones to know. So this is almost, in a way, kind of a journal in which it gives you a lot of time to think about what it's like, how you want other people to treat you, what I want my loved ones to know about my wishes at the end of life. And so a lot of people enjoy filling this out because they feel that it is more like a journal. It's more like a personal way to talk about your advance directives. So again, as we go through the planning process, we talk about how are your directives going to be respected? I'm sure that we can all have horror stories about your directives, people's directives not being implemented. We can't ever guarantee that, but we can certainly, it's a good start by talking about it, documenting it, and then making it accessible to other people. So you've communicated your wishes to your agent and also to other people, family, friends, and your primary care physician. It's important for your physician to have a copy of your advance directive. Virginia has a registry, and you can upload it to the registry so that it's available throughout the state. You can also, through the registry, you can obtain a wallet card, which you can fill out and keep with you at all times. If you were at a point where you had a terminal illness or you had multiple chronic illnesses, which would mean that you may have a massive event that would lead to your death, you can also request a DNR, do not resuscitate order, or a POST, which is a physician's order for sustaining treatment. Both of these are different from the advance directives because they are a physician's order and would be treated as such in a hospital. An advance directive is not a physician's order, but it's most likely going to be respected in the hospital if you were unable to speak for yourself. CIAC volunteers can meet with you via phone or a web conference to go over the advance directives and help you to fill it out and answer any questions that you may have. This went very quickly. Usually I have a lot of stories and a lot of questions. It's very different doing it nowadays. So I hope that you have some comments or thoughts or questions.
Cynthia, I have a question while we wait for attendees to potentially ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
What, if any, steps do you need to take to donate organs? You kind of briefly touched on the anatomical gifts earlier.
Right. Well, the easiest one is through your driver's license. You just fill out the short little form on your driver's license. There are organizations out there now that specialize in making sure that if you want to donate something upon death, that this occurs. They're independent organizations, and they're also university hospitals that, such as I believe that Georgetown is still doing it, and Hopkins. And so if you wanted to donate your brain, your heart, a lot of time, most of the donations that are done nowadays are for tissue. But if you have a particular disease, and your doctor will often ask you, if you have cancer or dementia or something like that, they'll guide you as to good places that you can donate.
Cindy, we have a couple questions from the chat and the Q&A. The first one that I saw was, how often should directives be updated? It's a question from Sarah.
Sarah, it really depends on whether or not you have changed your mind about certain things. For instance, if you appoint an agent who is no longer able to speak for you, then you would definitely want to change your directive. And as you go through life, if you have different thoughts about what you would want to happen to you after death, you definitely want to change it. I think a lot of people started thinking about this during the pandemic because we were so surrounded with death and people talking about death and seeing it every day in the hospital. And that brought up a lot of questions about, well, what would I want to happen to me if I was in that situation? Again, many of those people were young and would have never thought that they would have been in this situation. So, it really depends on your agent, whether or not you want to update that person, or if you're starting to have different thoughts about how you would want to be treated at the end of life.
Thank you, Cindy. I have another question. This is the forms that you showed us were Virginia forms. Is it valid in another state if I move?
Most people will respect the Virginia or any advanced directives that you have, especially if you're traveling. However, if you are a resident, if you become a resident of another state, then it is highly recommended that you find that state's advanced directive and fill one out.
Thank you. And I see one more through the Q&A. How can you set up a progressive procedure and sort of adjust your wishes as your health deteriorates?
I have never been asked that question before. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
You're in charge of that. You would be the one who would be continually, like I said, on the advanced directive, you can write in anything you want to, which means that you don't necessarily, well, you would have to get it re-signed by witnesses. But yeah, I don't think there's any easy way to do that. You would need to fill out another form and have it signed by witnesses. I'm trying to think about one thing that you would want to do probably if you were terminally ill, or if you had multiple conditions that are probably going to lead to your death, you would want to talk to your doctor about the post or the DNR, so that those are doctor's orders and have a little bit more weight in the hospital than the advanced directive.
Great. And it looks like another question is, what's the difference between the DNR and a post?
The post is just more in depth in terms of asking you questions about what you would want to happen at the end of life. It has 4 or 5 different questions and different options, and it lists the treatments, such as, do you want to have IV fluid? Do you want to have tube feedings? Whereas the DNR is very short. It just asks you if you want to be resuscitated or not. And So and one day, I think Virginia is hoping that the post will take the place of the DNR, because it is a little bit more specific. And it also, when you're trained in administering the post, we're encouraged to make sure that before it is completed, that you have had that discussion with your family and with your healthcare providers, so that it is that people know about it. Because the worst thing that can happen is that somebody wakes up one morning and finds out that they've been named the agent of their mother or their father or an aunt or an uncle, and they had no idea what that person wants because they've never had the conversation. So a very important part of the post is the person who is administering it and signing it, making sure that those conversations have been had.
Great. I don't see any other questions right now. I did have a follow-up though, just from the earlier question about the moving from state to state.
Mhm.
If you forget to update your advanced directive and you pass away and you've moved to another state, is that Virginia one still valid, or?
It depends on the state. I think that most people are going to recognize it just because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
But there could be states that are very strict and who will not do that. So it's just important to think about that if you become a resident of another state.
Okay. And then someone else also had another follow-up question. What happens if you live in Virginia, but the doctor is in DC? Does that?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So it's
Yeah, the doctor can
not
sign off
regulated.
on it.
Okay. Great.
I'm sorry that we couldn't meet in person.